I see a lot of Denon and Marantz owners kind of back and forth, like on different forums and stuff like that. A lot of times you get people who have Denon and they may become brand loyalists to Denon. You have people who have Marantz, may become brand loyalists to Marantz, Yamaha, so on. I see people say oftentimes, like even when people are looking outside of the brands of Denon and Marantz, and let me say this: if you like Denon, you like Marantz, that is fine. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying any of them are bad. When people have like a variant of the Denon, right? It could be like the 6700H, it can be the A1H, it can be like any one of them, the 3800H, the 47, it could be anything, right? And you may have somebody that may say, "Oh, well, I've got a Denon, but I'm thinking of going to a Marantz." And people quickly from the Denon side, you often hear, "Well, I don't know why you would want a Marantz. It's not going to be any different than the Denon. It's just going to look different. It's going to have a different exterior box. It's basically the same thing. You're just paying more of a premium for the price for the sister company, and it's not really going to give you anything more." I beg to differ, right? This is coming from a person that's owned the Denon, right? I've owned the Marantz, owned the Anthem, right? I've owned the Yamaha, I've owned the Akio RZ50. I still have. I've had a lot of different things. I've heard a lot of things. The Trent-off, all of that, right? Storm Audio, the Lingdorf, the Steinway Lingdorf, everything. I've heard the Macintoshes, everything, right? AV10s and AV20s, Marantz, and all of that. There is a difference that whether or not people, even when you go to like the higher end Denons, right? Because you have like different, models and, stuff like that. You can go from I think it's 960 all the way up to A1H and something like that, right? And they do have slightly different tonality, but for the most part, to me, they all sound right? They don't have great sound separation, in my opinion. I think they sound decent, right? Nothing bad about them. They just sound decent. It's like if you're not a critical, like not everybody's a critical listener. We're not all trying to listen to music in 2-channel and only want to run the fronts and you know what I'm saying, like long, open. Like we want, some of us like crossovers, some of us don't. Some people just they like what they like. You know what I mean? Some people, they can't listen to music unless it's super critical, unless they have a hi-fi Rose, unless they have something like that. You know what I mean? And some of us are Macintosh. Some of us just listen to music. Some of us are cool listening to music through our theater system, right? So we don't always have to be super critical when it comes to viewing movies and listening to movies. So even though like a Denon may not have as great a sound separation as others, right? It can have decent sound separation, right? But in Marantz, to me, it sounds like layers of sound is a little bit better separated with the Marantz, right? Not only that, the tonality, right? So the Denon is gonna, to me, sound bright. Some people feel like their Denon sound warm. I don't know what they may have done in their Denon apps, or maybe their direct live. Maybe it have curb some things for the room to make it sound warmer. But to me, Denon's, for the most part, even when they're running like direct live, still sound bright to me, right? Whereas Marantz has a warm signature sound. Some people don't like the warm signature sound. They say it sounds too artificial. If you listen to music, you don't want to hear anything being added to the music, right? So, it just what it is. Or a movie, you don't want to hear a warm sounding movie. You might want more of a dynamic or like a cinema sounding experience when you're listening to a movie. You want it to sound more cinematic, not musical, or musical / cinematic. You might not like the sound of a Marantz, right? Some people think the Marantz sounds bad. I don't know if you're coming from a Denon and you listen to a Marantz, I honestly do not understand how you can think a Marantz sounds bad. I don't, what I mean? I've heard a lot of different Marantz. I've heard a AV10, a AV20. I've heard, Cinema 50, a lot of the cinemas, and I don't. I've heard a lot of Denons. I don't understand how you can think a Marantz sounds bad. Denon sounds decent. You know what I'm saying? Sounds good, but Marantz just, I think it takes that step up and sound quality, and it sounds better. So I think a lot of times we may look at channel counts And we may look at the exterior of things and we may say, okay, well, it might just, it's the same thing, just in a prettier box, but it's more to it than that. It may have different capacitors, and the boards may be slightly different, or capacitors, resistors, and all of that could be why the Marantz may sound or give you a different sound signature. So I don't know. Like, my opinion, not necessarily the boards, but the capacitors, resistors, all of that matters. So, and then where it's built, like, a lot of that matters. Sometimes people build things better, than other manufacturers. You know what I mean? So it's just, even if it's the same as sister company, one unit might be built in Taiwan, another unit might be built, in Japan or so. You know what I mean? Just different manufacturers, different things. It's depending. But to me, every time I hear a Marantz, I know it's a Marantz. And like, if to me it sounds better than a Denon. So I don't think you're wrong if you have a Denon. I don't think it's, that just may be what your ear is accustomed to. But to my ear, and hearing a lot of different things, and maybe you heard a lot of different things, like some people like Yamahas. They may think Yamahas sound better than other things. Like, I don't know. But to me, a Denon and Marantz, I think Marantz sounds more premium than a Denon. So even if you're looking at the same channel count, and the Marantz may be a little bit more expensive, that channel count, yeah, I mean, it's, just get the channels you need, but how that thing's going to sound is going to sound better than a Denon. If you put a Denon, sounds kind of bright and flat to me, whereas a Marantz sounds warm and fuller in sound. Bass is about the same, it just depends on how he's calibrated, whatever. It's about the same, but the Marantz just sounds warmer, so it depends on your speakers, right? Some people's speakers may not like the warmer sound, right? It may not convey the warmer sound like how other speakers may convey it. Maybe the brighter sound sounds better with different people's speakers. Maybe that's what it is. But with all of the speakers I've listened to, and I've like I said, I've got Denon 3800H. I've heard a lot of different Denons, and at Hi-Fi Buys in Nashville. I'm not telling you to go there, but I've heard a lot of stuff, right? And I do not think a Denon sounds close to a Marantz at all. You know what I'm saying? But y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section. Do you feel like the Denon is superior to the Marantz? Do you think the Marantz is superior to the Denon? Do you feel like it's negligible? Do you feel like if you're looking at the same channel count, just get the channel count and everything else doesn't matter? Like, do you feel like the amp's internal? Do you think the internal amplification matters? What do y'all think? I just feel like, and then oftentimes with the Marantz, I feel like, for at least with the ones that I've seen, you may get a little bit more amplification out of the Marantz, but then you always use external amplifiers, if you want, but to me, just as a whole, if I had to choose, I'm going with Marantz. It's my opinion, because if I like music and movies, but if I just like movies and I didn't listen to music and I didn't care about none of that, Denon. But if I want to hear good sounding music in the movie, when they're playing the musical score and everything, Marantz. I think it's as simple as that. But y'all tell me what y'all think down in the comment section below. Comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think about that. Peace.